a few days back, people were saying that in the coming days, you should keep an eye on Valve because something big is coming. There is a big announcement. Every so often, people are saying this, and almost every single time, it's nothing. It's nonsense. But there are those times, and this is one of those times because the GabeCube is actually real. And not just the GabeCube, a new iteration of the Steam machine, this time actually being made by Valve, also a new Steam controller, and a new VR headset, the Steam Frame. Now, if you follow people like Brad Lynch, otherwise known as Sadly It's Bradley, you knew that things were being worked on. There's been a lot of data mining, we knew there was gonna be a controller, we knew there'd be a headset, and people were speculating about some sort of console because of random things that were being upstreamed, but nobody knew when it was going to be. Now is that when? At least the announcement, this is all releasing in 2026. Also, don't be confused by the demo and the lineup. There's not a new Steam Deck. There might be a limited edition version that comes out alongside this, but we're not getting a new version of that, at least just yet. And about a year ago, Brad Lynch said this: Valve, Deckard and Roy, that is the Steam Frame and its VR controllers, Steam Controller 2, and this new Fremont device all at once. It reminds me when Valve showed off the crazy Steam universe of hardware products at GDC 2015. 10th year anniversary of that is next year. That next year being this year. Let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Firstly is the Steam controller. I'll scroll down to this one so it doesn't move on us. It's a Steam Deck, right? Like, I think anybody from seeing any of the early renders, or honestly, just the fact that they built the Steam Deck, could have told you it was probably going to be laid out like a Steam Deck. It's a little bit different though. So with the Steam Deck, it has these sort of flush, flat edges that go directly up against the device. Personally, I find it gets a little bit uncomfortable after holding it for quite a while, as most game controllers, they sort of angle outwards as it's the way your wrists actually work. And that is what is being done here as well. It's laid out like a Steam Deck with the same button layout, the same thumbstick layout and touchpad layout, but it has that angle you expect from a controller. It's unclear exactly how it's going to feel without, holding it, but from what I can tell, it appears to be the Steam Deck, but slightly better. As for size, it's around about the size of a normal controller. So that was my 8-bit Do controller. Here we have my PS5 controller. If you're used to holding a modern controller, it's a couple of millimeters either way. And it has the same features as the Steam Deck. So you have your motion controls, if you're the kind of person that likes doing gyro stuff. Not for me, but I know a lot of people are a big fan. Also, you have the back buttons as well. So of course, those are going to be customizable within the Steam interface. But it does have a big improvement over the Steam Deck. Magnetic thumbsticks. TMR thumbsticks. The Steam Deck does suffer from a bit of stick drift. I've not experienced it myself, but I know after long enough use, a lot of people report that issue. This basically fixes the problem, and this is the solution the console manufacturers don't want to spend the tiny amount of extra money to fix. Thank you. And you have your haptic motors both for the trackpad, so if you're the kind of person who likes that, not exactly my thing, but it also has rumble as well, which is always nice to see. Now, don't trust any manufacturer numbers here, but they claim 35 plus hours of gameplay. We'll see in real-world testing what it actually is. Now, of course, it has its own little adapter. That is this one right here. You might notice it connecting to the device, though. The wireless adapter is also the charger. So if you're not using the device, you can dock the controller onto the adapter and just charge it. That's awesome. Now, of course, if you want to go and connect it to something else, you can make use of Bluetooth as well. Also, it does have a USB-C port, so you can run it wired, and of course, the USB-C is also going to charge the device. Honestly, this looks like a really solid controller, and because it's made for the Steam machine, you can expect it to have amazing support on Linux, amazing support in the Steam interface, and they've actually been going around and upstreaming support for the Steam controller into various projects like SDL. So when this releases, just expect it to basically work out of the box. And the controller market seriously needs some disruption. Companies like 8BitDo are doing a good job, but this controller, assuming they don't price it in a really stupid way, is gonna be really cool. I'll talk about pricing and stuff like that towards the end of the video. Now let's go to the meat. The GabeCube. The Steam machine. I do not understand this device. I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't know how this exists. It's a powerful gaming PC packed into a roughly 6-inch cube. This is the full measurements. Okay? Now, let me just show you something. Here we have a random-ass PC power supply. This, where is it? This is basically the size of a PC power supply, which is fine, but it doesn't have an external power brick. Everything is in the 6-inch cube. I want to see this thing torn down. Now, they don't mention it in the announcement video, but you will see throughout this GIF here, there are different custom front panels. Don't get your hopes up too much for those, though, because yes, it is magnetically attached, and almost certainly there are going to be third-party options, because look at how much third-party stuff is available for the Steam Deck. But people notice things like the wood grain one. In some of the demos, they were showing off an e-ink display embedded into the panel. Valve has a few prototype plates in its offices, a wood effect one, a TF2 one, and one including an e-ink display monitoring key metrics. This is mostly a fun side project rather than something that will end up on sale. I'm sure people are going to be selling things, though. Just, if you think ones like this are really cool, again, don't get your hopes up. And just after I finished recording, someone sent this to me. Leave it to dbrand, before a device even releases, already have what appears to be a custom shell, not just stickers. Now, Valve is quoting 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck. Until I see third-party benchmarks from Gamers Nexus or someone else like that, I would take everything a company states with a massive, massive pile of salt. As for the specs, it has a semi-custom AMD Zen 4 6-core 12-thread up to 4.8 GHz with a 30-watt TDP, and the GPU is an RDNA 3 with 28 CUs, 2.45 GHz max sustained clock with 110 watts TDP, 16 GB of DDR5 RAM with 8 GB GDDR6 for the VRAM. And with those specs, people are guessing somewhat less powerful than a base PS5, an RTX 4060, or an RX 7600. Without clear stress testing and benchmark numbers, it's hard to really say, especially due to it being a very small form factor device. It's unclear if heat is going to be a problem. I hope it's not, and some of the teardown-esque, the taking off the outside shell, it appears that basically the entire device is a giant heatsink, so hopefully it's not a problem. But again, we'll have to wait and see. With that 6 times more powerful than a Steam Deck, they are quoting 4K 60 FPS with FSR. Now again, we will see about that, and real-world benchmarks are going to tell us what it's actually going to do. I don't think Valve is openly trying to mislead people. However, every company selling a computer is gonna be, fudging a couple of numbers here and there. There will be 2 separate models, a 512 gig version and 2 terabyte version, both with NVMe SSDs, with a micro SD card slot as an expansion slot. Now, this storage, the internal storage, is going to be upgradable as well, and it's basically accessible just at the bottom of the device. You can just take the bottom panel off and swap things in. The RAM is also theoretically upgradable. It is SODIMM RAM, but it's a little harder to get access to. It's not fully clear yet, as nobody was willing to just tear down the demo unit. But the thought is it would require removing the outer casing and the heatsink from the motherboard. So it shouldn't be crazy difficult, but it depends on how tightly things are, inside that box. Considering how small it is, it's probably going to be a bit difficult to do so. And of course, like the Steam Deck, it is running SteamOS 3 and KDE Plasma for the desktop mode. What a massive win this is for KDE, right? You have the Steam Deck running KDE Plasma, you have a pre-built PC, basically, effectively a console, running KDE Plasma. This is such a massive boon for the environment, and this also basically cements the fact that Valve is going to keep investing in the KDE Plasma. And whilst it might look like a console, whilst it might be shaped like a console, whilst you might be able to treat it like a console, it's a PC. It's a Linux-powered PC. It's running games through Proton. If you want to use it for productivity, you want to use Godot, you want to program on it, you can do that because it is a PC. And when it comes to I/O, it is very standard. So standard, in fact, that some people are actually complaining. It has 2 USB 2A ports, 2 USB 3A ports, a USB-C port. A lot of people are saying, oh, why isn't one of these also a USB-C port? Frankly, I don't really care. For me, it's fine. I know a lot of people will really want this push to USB-C. A lot of peripherals people use are still USB-A. So for most people, it probably doesn't matter. Of course, you have that micro SD card slot for expansion. You have a full Ethernet port along with Wi-Fi if you prefer Wi-Fi, and a DisplayPort 1.4 port, and HDMI 2.0 with an asterisk. So this is 2.1 capable hardware. However, even Valve can't circumvent the HDMI forum. They are working on getting full 2.1 there. So somewhere down the line, it may be updated with full support. Considering the hardware, it's not that big of a deal, but it would be nice to have that there as well. Regarding that Wi-Fi, it is Wi-Fi 6E. Also, you have Bluetooth 5.3 if you want to connect your controllers or your headphones or any other things you might want to use Bluetooth for. But you don't need it for the Steam controller. Whilst you have your little dongle thingy, you don't need to use this either, because it actually has the wireless adapter for the Steam controller built into the device as well. You can connect up to 4 Steam controllers without needing to plug in anything extra. And another cool thing is this LED strip along the front. That's not just for Steam. You can use that as well. This is 17 individually addressable LEDs, and you can do what you want with it. Now, it's most likely going to be configurable through the Steam interface. Presumably, there will be some sort of API to control it as well. And that means how many minutes do we have to wait until Bad Apple? I'm guessing probably 5? I'm assuming people are probably working on something before it comes out, and then immediately doing it. And of course, like with the Steam controller, I will talk about pricing towards the end. Now, lastly, we have the Steam Frame. The follow-up to the Index, not necessarily an Index 2, and that's why it's not called Index 2, it is called the Steam Frame. It is its own separate thing. However, the Index has now been discontinued. They will no longer be manufacturing it. This is a fully wireless headset, making use of camera-based tracking. Also, for the radio connectivity dongle nonsense, it has dual radios. Ooh. One radio is dedicated to streaming audio and visuals, and the other connects to your Wi-Fi. Also, it's using some magic fancy tech, which tracks your eyes and then focuses the resolution where you're actually looking. I'm sure someone far more graphically inclined than I am can explain that better, but it sounds cool. Now, the VR controller is obviously intended for VR, but they do have everything to be able to play a regular non-VR game as well. You have both your sticks, you have your buttons, your D-pad, your left and right bumper and trigger, and you don't have touchpads. That's basically the only difference with the Steam controller. Also, like the Steam controller, it does have those magnetic TMR thumbsticks as well, so stick drift just shouldn't be a problem. Now, speaking of the Steam controller, there's one thing I kinda skipped over with that. When you use it with the Steam frame, it can actually be tracked by the Steam frame and easily pairable with that device. So if you want to go and play your non-VR games on a big virtual screen, you can easily use the Steam controller as well. Now, of course, you can go and use other controllers, but obviously they want you to buy the Steam controller. But here's the big thing about the Steam frame. It's not just a VR streaming headset from your Steam machine or any other computer you might have, it also supports standalone play as well. The Steam frame, not just that, is a standalone PC. It's running SteamOS. It has, I'm not joking, it has KDE Plasma for the desktop mode. So if you want to go and compute on a really big virtual screen on the Steam frame, you can do that. Now, I wouldn't recommend that as your main computing device, but everything they're saying implies that should be possible. There will be two separate versions, one with 256 gigabytes, the other with 1 terabyte, both of UFS storage, and also will be expandable with the micro SD card slot. It has 16 gigabytes of unified LPDDR5X RAM, and they are saying a 21.6 watt-hour lithium-ion battery. Now, of course, it's going to depend on the game, how much battery life you get, so in this case, they do not specify, and I would like to see some real-world testing here to see what it can actually do. As for the display, it is 2160 by 2160, that is per eye, and it has a 72 to 144Hz refresh rate display, with the 144Hz being experimental. And like the Steam machine, all of the connectivity you could possibly want. Now, the really interesting part is this has a 4nm Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. This means the Steam frame is an ARM-powered device. Of course, you could stream the games from a PC, but if it's ARM-powered, how are you going to play all of the VR games on Steam? You know, Half-Life Alyx and various other games you might want to play. Well, Valve has had to introduce another bit of tech, a way to convert x86 code to ARM code, and for this task, they are using a tool known as FEX. This isn't something they've made themselves, but this has been around for a long time. It's very much akin to Wine. So, like with Wine, they took Wine and then made Proton. In this case, they're taking FEX and probably adding some extra things into it as well, and then upstreaming things as they need to upstream them. And in case the name FEX sounds familiar, it is also being used on things like Asahi Linux. Now, Valve has not specified compatibility, so it's unclear how many games are going to work at launch, how many games they're going to have tested. We'll see. It's probably going to be very akin to what happened with Proton, where they released it with a fairly small list of games, probably a lot bigger now because there's been a lot more development done. And then over time, people are going to test other things, realize a lot more things worked than what Valve stated worked, and then things are going to get better and better and better over time, and eventually, you're just not going to have to care if a game is or is not supported, it's just going to work. But not only that, so with it being ARM-powered, there's obviously a reason you would make it ARM-powered. A lot of VR games are made for Android, and Android is generally ARM-powered. You're going to be able to take Android APKs and run them directly on the Steam frame. This also implies they're making use of something akin to Waydroid for running Android software on Linux. They'll also be accepting ARM games directly into the Steam library. So if developers want to go and easily make it available to Steam Frame users, they can also do that. We need to address a couple of elephants in the room. All of these devices are super cool, and I hope they are actually as cool as they look. We need to talk about things like availability. So everywhere the Steam Deck is currently being sold, these devices are also going to be available. That includes USA, Canada, UK, Germany, France, Australia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. Now, I assume this is going to be expanded over time, and of course, if, it's being sold in Germany, buying it somewhere else in Europe is pretty easy, right? But there's a lot of places that are not included here, like Latin America. And I know a lot of people were very disappointed with the Steam Deck, so hopefully that gets expanded into the region as well. Prior to launch, the Steam Deck Verified program is also going to be expanded to the Steam Machine and the Steam Frame as well. So they're going to be doing, they've probably done a lot of the testing already, but they're going to be doing a lot more testing and making it somewhat clear what games are just going to work and the games that might have problems, which means there's going to be new criteria, especially for the Steam Frame because it's a VR headset. But the really big elephant is pricing. So far, no pricing numbers have been stated. I don't know if this is worrying or they just want to make a big deal about it closer to launch, because pricing is going to make or break these devices. I don't really know what a good price for the Steam Frame would be. I'm not really big in the VR space, so feel free to debate about that in the comment section below. I want to talk about the controller and the GabeCube. So, considering that the Xbox controller, the one for the latest console, retails at $65 USD with vastly less features, without having magnetic thumbsticks, just generally being a pretty, where is my controller? Pretty basic controller. Like, it works, but like, there's way less features than the PS5 controller, or the 8-bit Do controller. This is pretty basic. The PS5 controller currently retails at $75 USD. I don't want to see pricing like one of the Elite controllers. The Elite controllers, I think, would price it out of the range for the majority of people. If they could price it, like a PS5 controller, that would be pretty good. If they could price it like an Xbox controller, or even lower, I don't know why any PC players would ever buy one of those controllers. Now, the GabeCube. So, the 1TB PS5 with the disk drive is $550 US. Could they, or would they sell it under this price? I know a lot of people are speculating that could be around the price range. If that's the price they went with, I don't think anybody would be disappointed. I think people would be mostly happy. The 1TB Steam Deck OLED is $649 US. Considering what this device is, I don't want to see it, but there is a chance, even though it is considerably less powerful, that it has PS5 Pro pricing at $750 USD. I think if they went with that, that's probably the top end they could sell it for. If they went any higher than that, honestly, I don't know why people would buy it then, because consoles are cheaper, and PC gamers already have a PC. If they went PS5 Pro pricing, I just don't really see a reason why anyone would buy it, unless they want to support the fact that the device exists. If they went higher, I've seen people saying things like, oh, it's going to compete at the low-end PC market, and it's going to be $1,000. Good luck. If they sell it for $1,000 USD, I think it's honestly dead on arrival. I don't see anybody buying it. I don't know what the price is going to be. I know that the Steam Deck, it's not, okay, people say it's sold at a loss. There's not actually evidence of that, but considering the pricing, it's probably sold at or close to a loss. If they do the same thing with the Steam machine and price it incredibly aggressively and put it somewhere in the range of 550, 600 US dollars, I think it becomes a very compelling device. Now, one thing that hasn't been discussed is regarding anti-cheat games. So this is a common Linux problem. Games like Fortnite just don't work, Battlefield 6, things like that. This is a problem on the deck, it's a problem on regular Linux systems, and it's going to be a problem here as well, presumably, because they've not spoken anything on it, and if they had solved it, I imagine that would be a big part of their marketing. So my hope is if this does well, or maybe they're already working on something, there is some sort of push to have these anti-cheat games actually work on Linux, because right now it is entirely up to developers to go and enable anti-cheat, and the anti-cheat on Linux, it runs, it just doesn't work as well as it does on Windows, because it's actually not running at a kernel level, it's running in user space. So it's basically useless, let alone all of the other anti-cheat systems which just don't have Linux support. If Valve could solve that, or if they're working on something to solve that, or talking to game publishers, things like that, that would be big. I'm not going to hold out hope for that. I think just trying to get the device out at a reasonable price is already enough to sell it. As a Linux user, this is the biggest thing to ever happen to Linux. Proton was massive. Proton made it so you could actually play your Windows games on Linux without, a lot of the hassle that Wine classically had. The Steam Deck came out, it then showed people, hey, you actually can game on Linux, and if you want to use desktop mode, it's actually usable. This is the chance, and I hope Valve does not screw it up. This is the chance that Linux just, woo! I've seen the charts of market share. It's been generally going upwards, and if they do this well, it's going to speed up a lot. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is going to go well? What do you think pricing is going to be like, and what do you hope pricing is going to be like? Let me know down below. So if you liked the video, go like the video. If you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Silly Therapy, linked in the description down below. I am very excited, so hopefully I am not disappointed. Money that I don't accept.